My mother punished me for standing up to my brother. I said okay, and quietly took the company with me. My mother suspended me until I made things right with my brother. I just said, okay. The conference room went so quiet I could hear the air conditioner click. My mother sat at the head of the table like she was delivering a sentence, not a decision. Beside her, Blaine, my younger brother and the company's rising star, leaned back in his chair with the calm of someone who had never once worried about consequences. 10 business days, my mother said. No pay. You undermined Blaine in front of a client. Blaine's mouth twitched into that familiar smile, half victory, half warning. He was waiting for the show, the tears, the argument, the desperate apology. He wanted me to shrink so he could feel tall. I didn't give him any of it. I looked down at the plans spread across the table, the same drawings I'd stayed up nights refining, the same structural solutions that kept Sterling Development Group from collapsing under its own promises. My name wasn't on any of them. It never was. On paper, Blaine led the projects. In reality, I kept the buildings from becoming disasters. My mother tapped a pen against her notepad. Well? I lifted my eyes. Okay. The stillness that followed was different from normal office tension. It wasn't just surprise. It was fear, because for the first time, they weren't looking at a child who could be controlled by guilt. They were looking at an architect who understood load-bearing walls. And who had finally decided to stop holding theirs up. My office had been my shelter for 6 years. Floor-to-ceiling windows cut the Chicago skyline into clean geometry. The view wasn't a gift from my family. It was something I earned the way you earn anything real, through deadlines, mistakes, late nights, and the quiet pressure of being the person everyone depends on but no one credits. On the wall were my degrees in simple black frames. On the shelf were awards the firm had won while I ran project operations behind the scenes. A row of small prototypes sat like a timeline, concept models, joint systems, frame variations, proof that I wasn't support staff. I was the reason the firm's signature style existed at all. I didn't lock the door after I walked in. I didn't need privacy to fall apart. I wasn't falling apart. Tears are for loss, and I wasn't losing anything. I was removing weight. I pulled a cardboard box from the supply closet and started packing with the calm of someone cleaning out a lab after the experiment is over. Diploma frames first. Awards next. I wrapped them carefully, not because the company deserved respect, but because I did. I had worked too hard to treat my own accomplishments like trash. A soft knock came at the door. My assistant, Marin, peeked in, eyes wide with the kind of worry that spreads fast in corporate hallways. Are you okay? She asked. Are you really gone for 2 weeks? Go home, I told her gently. Take the rest of today. She hesitated, like she wanted to ask the real question, are you coming back? But she didn't. People in offices learn quickly which questions are safe. When the door closed again, I picked up the prototype that mattered most, the modular load frame system that had become the backbone of our luxury builds. It reduced construction time by almost half, cut waste, improved energy performance, and made my mother's company look like an innovator instead of what it truly was, a polished brand glued to my competence. My mother loved it because it saved her money. Blaine loved it because he could brag about it. I loved it because I created it when no one believed I could. That's the part most people don't understand about the reliable one. They assume endurance means weakness. They think silence equals surrender. It doesn't. Sometimes silence is how you survive long enough to gather facts. When you grow up in a home where love is traded for obedience, you develop a specific skill set. You learn that speaking up gets you punished. You learn that being useful keeps you close enough to breathe. You learn to make yourself essential, because essential things don't get thrown away, at least not easily. So I didn't just work. I studied. I watched how decisions were made, who was protected, who was blamed, where the company's real vulnerabilities lived. And quietly, without fanfare, I did the thing they never expected. I protected myself. Not emotionally. Legally. I built my work like a fortress, not a gift. The spark that lit all this happened 3 days earlier. Blaine, as VP of Client Relations, had brought in a major customer, one of those tech names people drop at parties to sound important. The project was a lakefront build meant to be photographed, praised, and used as marketing for years. Blaine promised the client something impossible, move-in ready in 75 days. 75. Concrete cure time alone made that laughable. Specialized glass lead times made it worse. City permits would move at their own speed no matter how many times Blaine smiled. This wasn't optimism. It was a trap. When I saw the signed contract, I didn't panic. I ran the schedule. I mapped the critical path. I built a revised timeline that still pushed hard but respected reality, 8 months, not 2.5. Then I sent the updated plan to the client, copying my mother and Blaine, with one calm line. To protect structural integrity and code compliance, this is the fastest viable schedule. No insults. No drama. Just math. Blaine barged into my office like I'd committed betrayal. You embarrassed me, he snapped. You made me look like I don't know what I'm doing. I almost said, that's because you don't. Instead, I said, I prevented a lawsuit. He didn't hear that. He heard the sound of his ego cracking. My mother sided with him immediately, like she always did. She called me negative. She said sales required vision and I was suffocating the company with details. Details. Like gravity. Like time. Like physics. That was the moment I understood my role in their world, not architect, not partner, not family. Mechanic. Fix the engine. Don't speak in meetings. While I taped my last box shut, I felt someone step into the doorway. Blaine. He carried that expensive cologne and confidence like a costume. He leaned on my drafting table, the one I'd used to design 3 award-winning builds, and smiled like he owned the air. Maybe this suspension will help you, he said lightly. You need to learn how to support the vision instead of policing it. He lifted the lakefront blueprints, upside down, and held them like a trophy. I'll manage this project, he announced. How hard can it be? You tell contractors what to do. You send emails. You make it happen. For a split second, a part of me wanted to warn him. To explain the soil composition, the pile depth requirements, the deposit deadlines, the cascading chain of consequences that happen when you treat construction like a social media pitch. Then I looked at his hands holding my work like he understood it. And I didn't warn him. I picked up my box. As I walked toward the elevator, my phone buzzed with a system notification. Access denied. Credentials revoked by administrator. My mother had locked me out of the server before I even left the building. She thought she was cutting off my access. She didn't realize she had just locked herself inside a structure I was no longer holding up. And that was when I decided. Tomorrow, I wouldn't be taking 2 weeks. Tomorrow, I'd be taking everything that was mine. The next morning, I dressed like I was going to court, not work. Charcoal suit. Clean lines. Hair pulled back tight enough to feel like armor. No jewelry except my watch, plain, functional, impossible to argue with. When you're about to end something that's been bleeding you for years, you don't dress for drama. You dress for precision. The lobby guard nodded as I passed. The receptionist looked confused when I didn't turn toward my old office. Instead, I walked straight into the boardroom. My mother was already there, scrolling through her tablet with practiced calm. Blaine sat beside her, coffee in hand, relaxed in the way only protected people are. At the far end of the table was Evan, the company lawyer. He had that tired, careful look of someone who knows where bodies are buried and hates being reminded of it. My mother glanced up. Are you here to apologize? No, I said. I set a thin leather folder on the table. I didn't sit. I'm here to resign. Blaine laughed. Not loud, confident. You can't resign. You're suspended. I looked at Evan, not Blaine. Effective immediately, I'm terminating my employment. And per Section 14, subsection C of my contract, I'm invoking constructive dismissal. The air shifted. Evan's fingers paused on his legal pad. Slowly, he reached for the folder. My mother frowned. That clause is for extreme cases. Removing system access, I said calmly, revoking project credentials, publicly undermining my authority, and issuing unpaid suspension without review qualifies. You helped draft that clause, Evan. During the restructuring. You remember. He did. I could see it in the way his jaw tightened as he read. Blaine leaned forward. This is ridiculous. You're trying to scare us. I'm clarifying, I said. There's a difference. My mother crossed her arms. Even if this fantasy holds up, what exactly do you think you're owed? Evan swallowed. Based on last valuation, equity buyout would be just under $900,000. Silence. Blaine's smile died first. My mother's followed, slower, like a curtain being lowered. That's impossible, she said. You don't own anything meaningful here. I opened the folder and slid one page forward. Page 12. Intellectual Property Addendum. Evan's face went pale. Blaine snorted. My name is on the patents. No, I said. Your signature is on the licensing agreement. Evan read faster now. His lips moved silently as he traced the lines. The modular frame system, he said carefully, is owned by Hollis Design LLC. That's me, I said. My mother stood up. You work for us. Anything you created is licensed to the company, I finished, contingent on my employment. Which you just breached. I let that sit. You can't pour a foundation, I continued. You can't complete current builds. You can't market existing designs. If you try, I'll file infringement. I'll win. And every stalled project will point back to this room. Blaine looked at my mother, panic breaking through arrogance. Fix this. She stared at me like I was a stranger. Like she was finally seeing the cost of years of convenience. You planned this, she said. Yes, I answered. Because you taught me to. 3 months later, my new studio smelled like clean wood and fresh paper. No assistants tiptoeing. No family politics disguised as leadership. Just light, quiet, and the steady scratch of a pencil doing honest work. The fallout wasn't loud. It was surgical. Contracts stalled. Clients sued. Insurance premiums doubled. Blaine tried to manage without understanding load paths or sequencing. He shouted. He blamed. He failed. Competence authority vanished the moment I walked out. I heard about it through contractors who called me privately, asking for guidance they no longer trusted the firm to give. I declined politely. I wasn't there to rescue anyone. One rainy Tuesday, my phone buzzed. My mother. I let it ring. An hour later, she stood in my doorway. She looked smaller. Older. The certainty she'd worn like a crown for decades was gone. We need you back, she said. You can take control. Majority stake. I didn't smile. I don't want the company, I said. I wanted my life. She opened her mouth to argue. Then closed it. For the first time, she had nothing to leverage. I walked her to the door. When it closed behind her, the studio was quiet again. Not the silence of fear. The silence of something finished. The silence after my mother left wasn't empty. It was organized. I didn't celebrate. I didn't call anyone. I sat back down at my drafting table and finished the line I'd been drawing before she arrived. Straight. Clean. No correction needed. That mattered more than any victory speech. People think walking away is the end of the war. It isn't. It's just the moment you stop fighting on their terrain. Over the next few weeks, the calls started. Former clients. Vendors. City inspectors who had quietly trusted my judgment for years but never said it out loud. They didn't ask for gossip. They asked for clarity. Is it true you're independent now? Are you available for consultation? Would you consider licensing your system? I answered carefully. Professionally. I didn't chase. I let the work speak. That restraint paid off. By the end of the month, 3 firms had licensed my modular frame system. Not exclusive. Clean contracts. Clear boundaries. No family clauses. No emotional fine print. The irony wasn't lost on me. The thing my father had always framed as his legacy was finally building homes, just not under his name. The real test came in early autumn. A zoning hearing. Public. Crowded. One of Sterling's stalled projects sat half-built near the river, steel skeleton exposed like a bad idea that refused to die. Neighbors were furious. Investors nervous. The city wanted answers. I hadn't planned to attend. But then I saw the agenda. My name was listed. Independent consultant. They were trying to use me without permission. I showed up. Not angry. Curious. Blaine was already sweating when he saw me. My mother didn't look up from her notes. The city panel asked questions. Technical ones. Structural ones. They turned to Blaine. He deflected. They turned to me. I answered. I explained why the foundation failed inspection. Why the timeline had never been viable. Why rushing concrete curing would compromise load distribution within 5 years. Facts don't raise their voice. They don't need to. The room shifted. By the end of the hearing, the city denied Sterling's extension. Fines followed. So did headlines. I walked out without speaking to my mother. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in years. 2 days later, the email arrived. Subject line, Internal Audit Notice. Sterling Developments was being reviewed. Financial irregularities. Misrepresented timelines. Inflated projections. I wasn't surprised. What surprised me was the attachment. A memo I'd written 6 years earlier. Ignored. Buried. Now resurfaced by auditors as proof that leadership had knowingly overridden professional warnings. My silence back then hadn't been weakness. It had been a record. The next time I heard from my father, it wasn't a call. It was a message forwarded by Evan, the lawyer. Sterling wanted to settle. They offered money. Stock. A public reconciliation statement. I declined. I didn't want closure. I wanted distance. That was when it hit them. They couldn't punish me. They couldn't buy me. And they couldn't rewrite the story without my consent. People don't fear anger as much as they fear independence. Late one evening, I locked up the studio and walked home through the city. The buildings I passed weren't monuments to ego. They were functional. Honest. Standing because someone respected physics instead of fighting it. I thought about the younger version of myself, quiet, useful, invisible. The one who believed endurance was the same thing as loyalty. She would have stayed. I didn't. Because systems don't collapse when you yell at them. They collapse when the person holding the load steps away. The attempt to pull me back didn't come with anger. It came dressed as concern. That was always their favorite disguise. 3 weeks after the audit became public, I received an invitation. Not a demand. Not a threat. A request. A family mediation lunch. Neutral location. Private room. No lawyers, they said. Just conversation. I almost declined. Not because I was afraid, but because I finally understood something important. You don't go back to burned buildings to check if the fire feels different. Still, curiosity won. The restaurant was quiet. Expensive, but understated. The kind of place where deals die softly behind linen napkins. My father arrived first. He looked thinner. His posture still tried to project authority, but it sagged around the edges. Years of control don't vanish overnight, they just lose efficiency. My mother arrived next. Perfect hair. Controlled smile. The expression of someone rehearsing empathy in the mirror. Alyssa was last. She didn't look powerful anymore. The confidence that used to fill rooms had collapsed inward, replaced by sharp movements and restless hands. Power, I'd learned, is loud only when it's borrowed. We sat. No one spoke at first. Then my mother reached for water she didn't drink. "We're worried about you," she said. I nodded. "You always are." My father cleared his throat. "This situation has gone too far." I smiled faintly. "It didn't start with me." Alyssa leaned forward. "You're enjoying this." "No," I said calmly. "I'm finished with it." That confused them. They were prepared for rage. For bargaining. For guilt. Not for detachment. My father launched into numbers. Lost contracts. Frozen projects. Bank pressure. He framed it as shared damage. As if proximity still equaled responsibility. "We built this together," he said. I corrected him gently. "I built systems. You built hierarchy." He frowned. "Your family." "No," I said. "I was labor with a last name." Silence. Alyssa snapped. "You think you're better than us now?" I looked at her. Really looked. She wasn't my rival. She never had been. She was a symptom. "I think I'm done competing for oxygen," I said. Then came the offer. A restructured role. Advisory position. No daily involvement. My name on the website. Quiet influence. A leash disguised as freedom. They thought they were being generous. I asked one question. "What happens the next time I disagree with you?" No one answered. That was the answer. My mother tried last. Tears. Controlled, elegant. Weaponized. "You're tearing the family apart," she whispered. I felt something then, but it wasn't guilt. It was clarity. "The family was already broken," I said. I just stopped pretending it was stable. She shook her head. "You're being cruel." "No," I replied. "I'm being accurate." Accuracy always feels cruel to people who survive on denial. I stood. "I came because I wanted to be sure," I said. "Now I am." My father looked panicked. "If you walk away now, there's no coming back." I nodded. "That's the point." Alyssa laughed, brittle and hollow. "You'll regret this." I paused at the door. "I already regretted staying," I said. "This part feels lighter." And I left. The fallout was quiet, but devastating. Within a month, Sterling Developments lost its largest lender. The audit expanded. Investors fled. Alyssa's title meant nothing without systems to support it. She resigned before she was removed. My father stepped down shortly after, citing health reasons. The company survived, but smaller. Cauterized. Reduced to something manageable. Legacy shrinks when it's built on extraction. Meanwhile, my world expanded. I hired carefully. Paid fairly. Designed slowly. I refused projects that demanded speed over safety. I chose clients who listened. The studio filled with calm. No raised voices. No loyalty tests. No invisible chains. One afternoon, I realized something strange. I no longer checked my phone for their names. 6 months later, I received a package. No return address. Inside was an old photo. Me, age 12, holding a model bridge I'd built from scrap wood. Proud. Unafraid. On the back, in my father's handwriting. I should have protected this. I folded it once. Then placed it in a drawer, not to forget, but to contain. Some acknowledgements come too late to repair anything. But they can still mark an ending. I locked the studio that night and walked home through streets lit by buildings that stood because someone respected limits. I had stopped trying to be chosen. I had chosen myself. Freedom doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives quietly, usually disguised as an ordinary morning where nothing hurts. I noticed it on a Tuesday. No tension in my shoulders. No rehearsed explanations in my head. No dread attached to opening my email. Just work. Real work. The studio was alive in a way Sterling never had been. Not louder, healthier. People spoke without checking who was listening. Disagreements ended with solutions instead of punishments. Credit traveled forward instead of upward. Competence had replaced hierarchy. And it changed everything. The first major test came from outside. A regional development firm approached me with an offer that felt familiar in the wrong way: fast timeline, enormous budget, aggressive marketing language. The kind of project my father would have chased without blinking. I listened. Asked questions. Ran numbers. Then I declined. The client was shocked. Tried to renegotiate. Offered more money. I still said no. Not because I couldn't do it. Because I wouldn't survive it. That was new. And powerful. Word spread. Not that I was brilliant. But that I was selective. The kinds of clients who respected boundaries began reaching out. Municipal projects. Educational spaces. Community centers. Work that required patience. Work that lasted. I took one particular commission that grounded me more than I expected: a public library renovation in a neglected neighborhood. Small budget. Tight regulations. Enormous impact. I walked the site alone before signing. Cracked concrete. Poor lighting. But good bones. I smiled. Some structures don't need replacement. They need care. Meanwhile, the past kept knocking. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just emails. From former Sterling employees asking for references. From contractors asking if rumors were true. From Alyssa. Her message was short. I don't know who I am without the company. I stared at it for a long time. Then closed the window. Not every wound is yours to dress. The last contact came from my father. A voicemail. No anger. No manipulation. Just exhaustion. I finally understand what you meant about systems, he said. Everything collapses when you build it on fear. I believed him. That didn't mean I reopened the door. Understanding isn't the same as repair. The library project finished 9 months later. On opening day, children ran through the aisles like they owned the place. Seniors sat near windows that hadn't existed before. Light poured into rooms that had been dim for decades. No plaques. No legacy branding. Just space. I stood near the back and watched people use something I'd built without knowing my name. And I felt whole. That night, I dreamed of bridges again. But this time, none were collapsing. They simply existed, strong, quiet, carrying weight without complaint. I realized then what I had truly inherited. Not a company. Not a surname. But a skill. The ability to see where pressure accumulates. To reinforce before failure. To walk away before damage becomes permanent. Some families teach obedience. Some teach survival. Mine taught me engineering. And I finally used it correctly. Closure doesn't look the way movies teach us. There was no final confrontation. No apology speech. No moment where everyone finally understood my pain. There was just distance. And distance, I learned, can be a kind of mercy. 6 months after the library opened, I received the final wire transfer from Sterling Developments. Not a settlement. Not compensation. A licensing fee. They were using the eco-frame again, under strict, humiliating terms drafted by lawyers who now spoke to me with care. Every beam they poured carried my signature, my conditions, my pricing. I never visited their sites. I didn't need to. Watching from afar was enough. The company survived, technically. But it was no longer a kingdom. Just a business. And that distinction mattered. People sometimes assume walking away means starting over. It doesn't. It means stopping. Stopping the constant calculation. Stopping the emotional interest payments. Stopping the hope that someday fairness will arrive if you just endure long enough. I didn't start a new life. I reclaimed the one that had been paused. My days found a rhythm. Morning drafts. Afternoon site visits. Evenings where work ended before exhaustion began. I cooked. I slept. I laughed without bracing for consequences. No one was monitoring my tone. No one was counting my compliance. Peace, I discovered, is not exciting. It is sustainable. A year later, the architectural journal that once featured Sterling ran a different headline. Independent studio redefines ethical development. They interviewed me. Asked about leadership. Asked about family legacy. I chose my words carefully. Some systems reward silence, I said. Others reward clarity. I build for the second kind. That was all. I never reconciled with my father. And that's okay. Reconciliation requires mutual accountability, not just regret. I wish him health. I wish him insight. But I do not wish him access. Boundaries are not punishments. They are architecture. The studio expanded slowly. 5 people. Then 8. Every hire came with the same conversation. This is not a place where fear produces results. If you need to be small to survive, this is not the room for you. They stayed. Because good people don't need domination to do excellent work. One evening, long after the city lights came on, I stayed late finishing a sketch. Not because I had to. Because I wanted to. I looked at the clean lines, the honest load paths, the structure that would stand long after I was gone. And for the first time, the thought didn't scare me. Legacy no longer meant control. It meant contribution. Some bridges are meant to be repaired. Others are meant to be burned so you stop walking back into the fire. I didn't destroy my family. I refused to let it destroy me. And in that refusal, I built something stronger than approval. A life with no hidden cracks. A foundation that doesn't require silence to hold. A future that belongs, entirely, to me. Thank you for watching the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Have a nice day.